there's a couple little things.
Yeah.
And then there's that company
It's
that rebuilds like ATR engines.
I just saw one that did a real big expansion, and they said, we got another jet set up.
Payco
Like the Swansburg, so they used to kind of do that down there too, so, you know what that's.
But they do
So close to
Southern
there.
and Frontier.
Good organization.
I mean, you see Frontier and Southwest line in Greensburg.
You don't want to get.
I don't want to get.
That's cool. And then they do these retrofits for KC-135. And it's
It has been. It has been.
I don't
bad.
know.
You know, 100 and some people
Don't feel bad.
deaths, I mean.
You have a plane, Gary?
I used to, but I got
You got rid of it.
Yeah.
Maintenance headache.
Did you get any girls like
Expensive
what
hobby.
we were doing April, about the April 15th?
That's
No.
cool though.
I'm open to anything.
You got a pilot right now, she's
I
up
used to
here.
have a
Get one.
surfboard.
Last week, the big
I had a
ones,
surfboard.
we're gonna
I
go.
don't mind. You got it, I think.
Wow.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock. So why don't we call to order? How is everyone?
Good. Friday Eve.
Present? Ready to work, huh? Okay, so the agenda tonight will be adoption of the minutes, a discussion in policy area 8, 9, and 10. And 9, we are just going to be talking about, not going through tonight, correct?
Yeah, just a very little, not much.
Yeah, the school person did not come.
They're actually working on their assessments and for school capacities, and I said, that's just what we want to hear about. And so, but I guess she's just been covered up busy, and it's not a good time. I think maybe we should decide to go ahead and do that homework.
And then if we want to change anything based on
Based on if we do ever get her to come and speak, just so we don't, you might want to do that.
Does anyone have any changes to the agenda that they would like to add, or can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
As amended to reflect that we're not going to take up policy 9.
Right.
Talk about it, but not go through the recommendations. She didn't respond.
Well, I move we adopt the agenda as written.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. We have the minutes that were sent out also. We didn't miss any. Yeah, they did. Did anyone have any comments on the minutes?
Beth wasn't sure whether Deborah was here or not, so she put her in both places.
Oh,
She was here.
she was, yeah.
Deborah was here.
But
I
I
actually
was,
miss Gary too.
I was not here.
But
Yeah.
Bob wasn't.
So add Deborah, get rid of
Or
Bob.
replace.
Yeah,
Right.
I just missed it.
With those two changes, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, hang on a second.
Gary, motion. Bob, second.
And on the first one, say Bob,
And Millie.
Bob and Millie. Gotcha.
Anyone opposed? Perfect. So I just talked to Todd a minute ago. There was a town council meeting on Tuesday night. So for those who weren't there, I think some folks were there. And I watched it thanks to Summerfield News, or Summerfield Scoop, whatever it's called now. And so if there was discussion about our committee and certain portions of our committee that I'll have Todd talk about and then Carrie talk about.
Yeah, Carrie, probably get the exact wording, but it goes back to where there was a petition to change the comp plan, and it all had to do in regards to density. Problem is, the town doesn't have a procedure set up to really do it. It was sent to the zoning board, but they wanted to refer that back until this committee met and got done with the decisions that was going to come out of this committee before they were going to make any recommendations. So it kind of got, deferred off until this committee gets done with the work of which it's doing.
So yeah, there was a, what do they call it?
There was a
Not a petition, an application?
An application to, yeah, the budget schedule from a couple of years ago, the fee schedule had a line item for application to amend the comp plan, which is a really unusual, I'm still not sure why it was in there. But, so there was a citizen application to amend the comp plan to include a .73 unit an acre density limit in the comprehensive plan as well as the development ordinance. That was taken to the zoning board for recommendation, whose recommendation was that kind of regulation belongs in an ordinance and not in a comp plan, and recommended against it. So but the citizen group that had originally asked is still asking for this. And so and there really isn't a process. That's what Todd was talking about, to amend the comp plan. It's something that you don't amend, as you guys know, it's something you don't just change, and we don't have our own set of processes. The fail-safe would be at least to hold a public hearing to make a change to the comprehensive plan, just like a zoning amendment. So the council decided, wait till they get your recommendations, see the water study's recommendations, since the application tied density to the water study. And there was one sentence that was removed from the draft ordinance that says, whenever there are changes to a comprehensive plan, ordinance should be updated to amended to update to reflect it. It would actually close the circle between the comp plan and the ordinance. And actually Teresa, who had submitted the petition, we had talked about it, and that would. So at the very least, they're asking you to include in your recommendations this additional sentence in the preface of the ordinance. And we can come back to that. You don't really have to make a, I don't know that you want to, because I don't have that sentence in front of me.
So here's what I'd
Would
recommend.
we do that when we got to water, or where would we?
No,
it's not
the
really
sentence
anything
is
to do with
overarching
water.
for everything,
Yeah.
it's not per one policy.
Yeah.
So I recommend, let's send that sentence out to everyone, let everyone kind
Okay.
of soak it in.
Good idea.
Or you can even hear the discussion of, what the town council said about this area. But one of the other things that was talked about, and so the motion ended up changing to be that they're gonna wait until we're done
Yeah.
and the water study is done, and then reevaluate from there. Now, there was talk too, and this is something for us to discuss, is to form a citizen committee or group to address the comprehensive plan, to revisit the comprehensive plan that's 8 years old. And so, I guess my concern, not concern, or let's bring up a thought starter here, is we are aligning the UDO with the comp plan, and then there's a chance that someone's gonna change the comp plan. So are we just gonna keep chasing our tails?
Yeah, I don't think there's a big chance of that. John was the only person that kind of brought that up. I think once we get things resolved here and get it resolved with the comp plan, I think we'll probably be good and not really have to do
So
that.
let's not bark up that tree for now.
Correct.
And let's just
Well,
see what happens.
And I know everybody loves coming to these meetings, and we can do it all again next year, I'll say.
Well, and they said, pull people from this group to be on that.
Yeah, it was really, well, would it be helpful, Todd, at some point to have the committee's opinion toward that, and to have, I mean, you can guess what it is, that they feel like they would be chasing their tails, but Andrew could lead them in some kind of statement to the council that
Well,
express their.
I would hope
sentiments.
once we got everything done with this, it should mesh enough with the comp plan, there really shouldn't be a need to go back and rewrite the comp plan, because the suggestions that come out of this committee, of course, will go to the zoning board, and they'll make their recommendations, so I would think through that process, it would kind of do all that to that point anyway.
Well, and then there was discussion around how would that be structured? But I think you brought up the great point. Let's see what happens. The motion did go forward to wait until we're done. Because we do have, that's what I was gonna say. We do have certain things that are outside of our scope that we've kept in our notes, right? That are changes potentially to the comp plan. So those are things that could help address some of these.
They're very you know, there are unsubstantive changes, was it things like defining a minor subdivision as 4 lots instead of 5. There were things like that. I don't know, Priscilla, if you were here when that came up, but when Andrew's talking about changes, he's not talking about changes to the substance of it.
Well, the only thing I've really noticed in reading and looking at each individual one is that some of the things that they're discussing in the comp plan have already happened. When they talk about like I-73
Yep.
and stuff like that. So it was, you know, I think really that's the only thing that the adjustment. Right, so there's a few things that have already happened that had not happened at that time. But I still feel like the comp plan holds pretty true.
Which actually would be good, since you guys have gotten into it so intimately familiar with it, to maybe at the end even give your opinion about whether it's relevant. And I have a list of questions to ask comp plans to determine whether or not they're still relevant, whether they need to be replaced, updated, revised, or stay as they are. Because there are options. One could do an addendum that just updates it, updates the demographics at the end, updates the maps, updates the
For the action items.
construction, the
That's
action
when I
items, exactly.
Interpreted it, I
And I-
assumed that we would.
And at the very least, I think that would be a recommended to do. And then the next step is, there's a bunch of questions that you ask it to see if it's still relevant. And actually, this committee's been asking it questions all along, kind of like,
It just hasn't been answering us.
yeah, yeah. Well, is it, if we, as development, there's been a lot of development that didn't follow the comp plan. Have there been, I guess you didn't answer that question, but it's a series of questions that go through a methodical review to say, you know what, we are comfortable, it's still relevant.
Well, the comprehensive plan, sorry, Millie, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to say that, remember when we did this comp plan, which had a lot of citizen, this is not something that you just say, oh, we'll change the comp plan. Because it had a lot of citizen input, and it also went on for a long time. So it wasn't like this was a spur of the moment thing, and it's not like we can do redo a comp plan on the spur of the moment, just because we don't like certain parts or we want to do this. But I think, as we're saying here, that a lot would be corrected when we do the UD, you know, when we give our recommendations to the zoning of that. So I know that we're not gonna deal with it, but I'm really scared when we even think about it because of the fact of how much we put into it. I was one of those citizens who went to all of those things, put in all of my input, and, you know, that was a lot. So I don't think that we need to get involved with that part at all.
So I think there are two very separate issues here, and we're getting them mixed up. And I actually think that the town council has kicked the can down the road, and this committee is not gonna help you with the procedural thing. If there was a budget line item that said, here's the path for you to modify this, and you keep saying there's no process, then make a process. Say it's gonna be every 10 years or every 12 years or 15 years we're gonna review the comp plan. This is how we're gonna do it. This is the citizen input. And we're gonna take your application and we're gonna put it in this process.
And here's the, I'll give you.
I mean, somebody could have said, I want the town to buy I want to modify the comp plan so that the town buys every historical property in the town. You know, the trouble is, it's an emotional issue right now that's been asked to modify the comp plan. So it's really a separate issue, I think, between how you modify the comp plan and what the particular application was to modify the comp plan. And I don't think this committee wants to take the responsibility to bail out the town council because you can't come up with a process to modify the comp plan.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think that we're happy, me as a UDO committee member, I'm happy to read these ordinances and put input to it, but that's not our job, is to help the town council figure out a process to modify the comp plan.
Just because.
I also think that talking about modifying the comp plan now, in the middle of this process, we have a draft ordinance that's never been finished. We're working on a comp plan that's about to be changed, we might as well just stop. You know, so it's crazy to even bring this up.
Just so you know, when I
It just,
saw.
it just delays things again. It's another reason not to do anything. So I think we should proceed as fast as we can, figure out how we can get this ordinance updated. Let you worry, as a town council, worry how you're gonna change the comp plan.
Yeah.
Let's get on with the job. We've gone too long without a good development ordinance, and we need to get it right quickly, I think.
Amen.
Yeah, and that's not the only loop, because we found the fee in lieu of, and there's a few others that we found in the UDO where things just keep circling because there's no end
Right.
to it.
Gary, would it?
Well, I was gonna comment that as important or more important than the question of how do we change the comp plan, I should think would be why we change the comp plan. Because the whole purpose of the comp plan is to give the entire community a reasonable expectation and a target for the future, and not to have that target keep changing, because that totally defeats the initiative and incentive and the process of the community developing in a natural, controlled fashion.
And a citizen engaged person.
Right.
So Bob,
Right.
your point is exactly where I was a couple of days ago when I read the agenda item that said, citizen committee to address the comp plan. I'm like, hold on, what are we doing? Why don't we just stop now? And I sent notes to the council and asked, hey, what is this about? And it was, they had left out density was the only thing in what they were supposed to be talking about. But then it morphed to be the whole comp plan, and I was right where you are. Luckily, they've moved that aside, and we are still going with our task to go forward. The one thing that did keep rearing up, and so as a group, we obviously need to at least discuss this at some point. Page 69 came up again last night, and plan development, the evil two words together of plan development. So I just, there's opportunities when we get to the housing side where we will address this in more detail. But I just want everyone to know that came up again. There are plenty of neighborhoods around here. I mean, I live in one that is a development plan, right? Hinson Forest, Armfield, et cetera, are planned developments, and we kind of like those in this community. So I think we've put a really ugly spin on planned development, or PD. Because this is not the one that's the ugly one that got all the bad publicity, but it's getting bad publicity still last night or 2 nights ago.
Well, in this committee, it feels like it needs quite a bit of work.
I mean, we put a lot of comments on this so
Yeah.
far, and I'm sure we will have a lot more. But I wanted everyone to know, and if you didn't see it, you can watch it.
And I was bombarded about that the other day, Saturday to be exact, and I spent a lot of time explaining, I felt good about myself, explaining what planned development meant. Because
It's better than unplanned, right?
Right, exactly. But yes, so, people get this thing and then they think that's what it is, and it sticks in their mind, and unfortunately, it's hard to convince them.
This is
Well,
the
the
current, this
definition
is the current
is-
ordinance, and what he's reading is in today's ordinance.
An area of land under unified ownership or control to be developed or improved as a single entity under a unified development plan in accordance with and subject to the requirements of this ordinance.
That's in today's ordinance that we've been working from since 1997, so, and the terminology is planned unit development, and that's the definition.
So instead of PD, we should say PUD, right?
Well, it's PD, PUD, PAD.
But in here, I mean, it
You
does
approved
say
one
mixed
today.
use. Like, are we not talking about mixed use when we say that? Because I think where people are getting concerns is on everywhere else, you talk about density limits and open space, and on this PD on page 69, there are no density limits
Well,
and there's
that's,
no
your
open
comments
space.
are
Yeah.
on record saying that,
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's not about-
if people are saying things, I'm guessing that's why, because I know that's where my concerns would, have come in.
But, I mean, it'd be sad if, we can just say, okay, no PD ever, take the words off the table. But this draft ordinance is lacking some district that allows the full, the comp plan to be fully implemented.
Right.
And I think I can say that now, even though we're not through the process, but I've seen plenty enough comments from you guys, I'm not putting these words in your mouth, that, that there's going to need to be something, and so. we
Policy 610 says mixed use
Yeah.
in the comp plan.
So whatever it's called, it'll be some kind of, I hope you don't do it without a plan. Because whenever you, especially when you mix different uses, it really needs to be much more carefully planned, so.
Melly, you hit, I think you hit the nail on the head too, is now this group, we can kind of be ambassadors to talk about these kind of things.
It's a good idea.
Because that's, I think we all came here and got educated and continue to every meeting. You know, we have some great stuff coming up with water, with hopefully schools.
Schools, residential options.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff that I would like you to talk about the schedule coming up so that we can preview some of those.
I have a question. With the water study that's going on, it's my understanding that it's not going to, it has really nothing to do with the USGS. Like Carrie said before, the science is not going to change.
That's right.
That what it is more is a system to bring in a municipal water. So,
Well, I can answer that. They're part of, it's about a municipal system to bring in water. And part of that study is whether or not groundwater is one of the sources that we'll get water from. So whenever anybody does that feasibility study, they look at water from other sources, they look at groundwater, they look at all this stuff. And I asked them, the hydrologist who will be doing that piece of the study, I asked them to please have him review the 1997 or 98 USGS report and give a opinion on it. Because the USGS report talks about groundwater availability and then ties it through formulas to density.
there was like a memorandum or something that was out. I mean, it clearly states that it's, you know, for economic growth and development and protection and that kind of thing. So when I read that, I didn't understand that at all. It just seemed like to me a mechanism to get the water here and looking for the
You mean
sources to get it
The
here.
feasibility study, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. There's just one piece of it looks at the groundwater availability.
Right.
And because the whole region has been so focused on that report, which is for when that report was for an entire region, not just for this specific area. And the other thing, the science of that report was science, but in any kind of science and math, you use assumptions in your formula to get to the end. And that report is full of assuming this, then such and such, assuming this, then such and such, assuming the soils are like this, and then assuming that people have the, you know, and assuming that the water does not stay on the site. It's super, super, super conservative, so much so that it's really not scientifically.
Hate to interrupt, but
That's
this
all right.
is exactly what we'll be talking about
Yeah,
in the
sorry.
next couple of weeks, right?
I just get off, I want,
You want to get into it?
Yeah, let's talk about the
Sorry.
agenda going forward, just so we can,
yeah.
and then jump into.
Carrie, would it help to put it up on the
Yeah,
screen?
definitely. Sorry, Andrew, thanks for talking.
I don't want to steal our thunder.
Well, I'm sorry I
Yeah.
missed being with you all 2 weeks ago, but I got caught up a little bit afterward in a conference call with Jesse and with Carrie. So I think I see where you progressed. We've been struggling to get the schools person here, and we're hoping that she would be here tonight. She's not. And we've also been working to schedule somebody to bring some expertise on the water and sewage treatment options topics, and residential options. So this is a this is my stab at saying, I think that this is where we are right now on the 15th of February, where the target is to finish up Summerfield Road, your recommendations. We were going to, I just found out that we weren't having a quality schools person here. But then doing a quick introduction, depending on where our time is, to how do you look at the historic preservation policy and where to look for it in the UDO. I've asked Carrie to give a very high level, here's what goes on around historic preservation. Some of you may already know it and just share that information. But at the March 1st meeting, we will hear from the schools system representative, but also hear your recommendations on what you saw in the UDO that relates to schools. That's not ideal, but I think that to keep on track, you're going to be asked to make your recommendations in very draft form. Hear the schools person, you can ask questions and get some answers, and see if you think you want to alter your recommendations on how the UDO treats schools.
Shall I give out homework for that before the next meeting?
Yeah, that would be for the next one. The one thing I see as an issue here is there's no way we're gonna meet every week in April. I'm
Well,
sorry,
that's,
there's just no
yeah,
way. I like everyone
and
who.
just to talk you through the rest, on March 15, we have the person representing the engineering firm doing the water and wastewater study. We also have Marlene Sanford from Tragic, the Triad EDIC, who represents home builders and realtors. I would think that with those two, that will be a night for a lot of discussion, and not to review homework, but to have you explore your, well, where is the water and sewer study leading us, and how will that influence things that might appear and should appear in the UDO? And then what about the market factors and trends that Marlene Sanford can bring and discuss? So that night, the 15th of March, I think is to learn a lot from these two people, and also we should on March 1st be able to finish quality schools, historic preservation, and I would hope limited local government.
I'll send that homework after tonight too.
And this is just my thinking on limited local government. There's a structure of who does what that is built into the ordinance. And it's good to understand that, as you know far better than I do, there's a very small town government, a small staff. There's a lot of responsibilities that the UDO puts on whoever is the planning director. So you as a committee need to really reflect very carefully, how do you maintain that limited local government and still get the enforcement that I think you would want carried out of the ordinance. So that's March 15, hearing from the two outside people bringing information. And then, on March the 29th, get into the substance of probably the water and wastewater first to keep in order. And I don't know how far we'll get on that night. Yeah,
Add to that.
and then it may be that pushes us over into the time after Easter to start the residential recommendations. Housing and residential development policy area number 6.
So I just want to make sure that we're all So at the March 15th meeting, the next day, I'll be sending homework for both housing and water and sewer.
Yes, I think so.
That's right?
Yes.
It's kind of coming down.
So you will, the, coming up in April, and I don't know whether Carrie has said she's
Is the
out.
March 29th meeting established?
No, the only
No,
two
that
that are
was it.
established on here right now would be March 1 and March 15.
Right.
So there's a question.
So that's what I was getting ready to bring up is 29 could replace 5, April 5. Like I said, I don't think there's any way we should meet every week in April after the 5th. I think that's just, I mean, I like everyone and I like seeing you all, but that's, we all have.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we need to get this done.
We
I mean,
do.
If we this drags in the summer, then it's gonna be terrible. So whether we work later, longer, but we ought to set a target to get this finished.
I think what we should do is let's go forward with the March 1 and March 15, reevaluate maybe at our next meeting what the sequence is from there. I think water's going to take a full meeting, and I think housing and residential is going to take
even
1 or 2.
Right.
But like Bob, maybe that's something we evaluate, is we say let's go 3 hours or something else that
How
allows
does
us to
everybody
get
feel
something
about at
done.
least penciling in that 3 meetings in March?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay
I'm
with
okay with
that.
March too.
Because
Yeah.
it's 2 weeks,
It's
so.
it's still a,
Yeah.
right, it's a gap, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so can we go forward then with the 29th for now?
Just to put it on a calendar,
Yeah,
that
let's
way I
put
can
that
put it on
Yeah.
a town calendar.
Right, yeah,
Do we have to make a motion to go to have that meeting?
I'll make the motion.
okay, I'll second after you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so we obviously have to announce it publicly that we're gonna go outside of our first and third Thursday of every month to go forward with the 29th. I think in that same announcement, we say that we're not gonna have a meeting on April 5th.
On the fifth.
And
But I'm with Bob too, I wanna get this done.
Yeah, but
And maybe there's some things we should talk about in future meetings where we spend a little more time or something so that we don't have to come back.
So do we have on the calendar the 19th of April?
The regularly scheduled meeting is the 19th, yeah.
Okay,
And we've just replaced April 5th with March 29th
Right,
in effect.
right.
So,
So could we just go down to, and make it April 12th and the 26th then?
what do you guys?
So we would have 2 weeks to get all 3 policies,
Yeah,
homework complete.
yeah, because if we do March the 29th, then we skip to April 12th. See what I'm saying?
That's a lot of homework.
Those two are gonna be big.
Yeah, they're big and that's a lot of homework.
Which one?
And I'm out of
The
town.
6th.
Housing and water?
Housing and water.
Right.
Okay, so on the 29th, we'll do housing?
Well, I think I can reschedule the 29th so I can be here, but.
I would think, if you want to keep it on the 29th, water, the 29th of March would be devoted to water.
Okay.
Let's assume that you're very efficient that night.
Ah.
The next